Hello all, welcome to BB101, Molecular and Cellular Biology. The cell cycle begins with its birth from a mother cell until its reproduction when it is divided into two new cells. The cell cycle helps in replenishing the old cells and deceased cells and helps in healing wounds. In this lecture, Professor Srivastava shall explain the different phases of a cell cycle. Thank you.
All right. Very good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to talk about the cell cycle. We have studied some general function of different organelle of the cell. Today we'll focus on how the cell divides and different components in the phases of cell cycle. I see a hand raised. Let me ask the student to first ask me some question if they have anything. Please unmute and ask me if you have any question. Vishal. Please be quick. All right. So I hope you're all aware that, all the lecture logistics, all the details are already uploaded in the YouTube. You have access to probably the first lecture and the tutorial. And again, whenever you click on the description of the video, you can see over there that, we have all the information given for the handouts, as well as, any questions, queries, something which is unclear to you. A Google form has been made where you can put, which slide number or which concept is unclear. And we'll try to come back today and, clarify that point. This is just to update all of you. The first week has been usually like, chaotic when you have to learn a lot of new things and you're not very sure where all the information you can capture. I hope by now you have access to the Campbell book, textbook. You have access to the handouts as well as the video and all the Google forms. Additionally, we are doing the quiz in the Moodle, which again, from today onwards, it will be the graded quizzes based on the previous lecture. It will be last 10 minutes or so, which we'll be doing that particular quiz today. All right. So today, the main points to be discussed are the cell evolution, how the cells evolved, cell cycle, and how cell dysregulates and disease like cancer can cause from this. So as we have been discussing in the last lecture about prokaryotic and eukaryotic origin of the cell. Sorry, I see a hand raised again and again. So Vishal, you want to speak something? I could not hear anything from you.
Sir, I also tried to unmute, but the host was not letting me unmute. So
Okay.
now it is unmuted.
Yes.
Sir, last day in the last portion of the lecture, you gave protein sequences on the NCBI site, and you said that you will also give us a Word document for practice. Then only you will ask questions in the quiz. But no such document was shared. And
you're right, and I did clarify that in today's quiz we are not going to have anything on the bioinformatics aspect. We do realize that we need all of you a little bit more time, and we will give you some more tutorial in that way to prepare for it before we ask questions on that. So there will be no question because of the bioinformatics. Yes. Okay, all right. I hope that puts all of you at ease. Okay, so let's first discuss about the evolution of the cell. We discussed about prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell in the last class, but how these eukaryotic cell evolved. So in this slide, I think let me just put some hypothetical drawing here and hypothetical concept, which of course, if you think about, we are talking about the billions of years time scale when the evolution would have evolved, right? So now when we are looking at probably a primordial eukaryotic cell almost 1.8 billion years ago in the sea environment, when now this cell was actually having the nuclear membrane and other organelle, but may not have mitochondria. So now some, the bacteria, which is the aerobic bacteria that came in touch with this particular eukaryotic cell, which is the non-photosynthetic cell, And symbiotic means like, that relationship has to be mutually beneficial for both. So this particular bacteria got engulfed in this particular eukaryotic cell. And because it was able to do aerobic respiration, which was the need for the cell to generate the ATP and the energy source, it became useful for the cell, and bacteria got, of course, the environment to protect. So therefore, that became quite mutual useful for both of them, and that became favorable so that it stayed actually like that. And this particular bacteria eventually became the mitochondria. We will come to that, like, how we can think about proving or disproving this type of theory, right? Now, let's say now this particular eukaryotic cell got evolved, which is already having this mitochondria. But now there was some other bacteria came in touch with this particular eukaryotic cell, and this bacteria was having ability of doing the photosynthesis. There are many bacteria like cyanobacteria, various type of blue-green algae, which you might be hearing all the time. These organisms have ability to do photosynthesis. So now this particular bacteria, photosynthetic bacteria that got engulfed in the eukaryotic cell, and again became part of it as a process of serial endosymbiosis. So it was earlier only symbiosis, but now it became serial endosymbiosis because one more bacteria got engulfed and stayed here. So it looks a little bit, speculation, right? At best, we can say speculation, and could be a wild hypothesis in many ways that how, a prokaryotic cell came in touch with a eukaryotic cell, became part of it. Then another prokaryotic cell or bacteria got again engulfed and became part of it. I'm sure you will be thinking along these lines and saying that, okay, what is the proof of, around these? So in this light, there has been, several hypotheses, various scientists, they tried to disprove these theory. And this model of endosymbiotic origin actually became very popular, and that got more attention and got some evidences. Given that in the cell, these two are the most peculiar organelle, which is having double membranous structure, right? Other than nucleus. So now the origin of these two membranes, from where it comes. People try to look for the, inner and the outer membrane of these organelle. Then why these two organelles have a very peculiar their own genome, and they can actually, make their own protein synthesis, and as if like they have their own machinery, they are pretty independent inside the cell as well. So several of these things started providing evidence in favor of the endosymbiotic origin. Of course, just to caution again that these are all hypotheses to begin with, because one could only simulate the billions of years time scale and try to come up with some hypothesis and do some experiment to at least provide evidences. It can't be very concrete evidence because it's very difficult to simulate that kind of situation. So now in this diagram, what is shown, like, this eukaryotic ancestral cell, when now you got a bacterium which is capable of oxidative phosphorylation, and likewise another bacteria which is capable of doing photosynthesis. That's where it got engulfed and make the mitochondria or chloroplast. Now the outer membrane, as you see this part, outer membrane of this organelle, it comes from the plasma membrane of eukaryote, whereas the inner membrane, that comes from the bacteria. So now what we have is a double membrane structure, and in double membrane, the inner membrane comes from the prokaryotic origin and outer membrane comes from the eukaryotic origin. That itself is interesting, right? And that is something which is provides additional evidences that probably there was this kind of symbiotic relation happened. So this is scientist Dr. Lynn Margulis, who gets the credit of providing a lot of evidences in support of this hypothesis of endosymbiotic theory. And additional experiments and additional evidences showing that, the mitochondria and chloroplast, they have their own genetic material. They have various type of cellular machinery which can perform the transcription to make messenger RNA, translation to do protein synthesis. They can also replicate, to split the DNA. Ribosomes are more similar in the prokaryotic origin. All of these provided evidence that mitochondria and chloroplast are very peculiar in nature, and probably they got evolved from some bacteria and became part of the eukaryotic cell. over the very long evolutionary time scale, some of these bacterial genes, which have also come as a part of that bacteria, were lost, and only the useful component of it, which is involved in the respiration of photosynthesis, that remain in the eukaryotic cell. So, of course, we cannot totally prove this particular hypothesis or say it is going to have all the evidences, but at least some partial evidences support that particular hypothesis. Let's recap a little bit about some of the concepts which we spoke about different organelle of cell in the last class.
Prokaryotes are simple unicellular organisms that lack a well-defined nucleus for carrying their genetic material. They are usually a few microns in size and are one of the most ancient life forms known, from which eukaryotes are believed to have evolved. Click on each component to know more about them. Bacteria can be divided into two major groups based on the structure of their cell wall and thereby their response to Gram staining. The cell wall of Gram-positive bacteria is composed of mainly polysaccharides and glycosylated molecules. It is made up of a single 20 to 80 nanometer thick homogeneous layer of peptidoglycan. In addition, cell wall usually contains teichoic acid, which is covalently connected to either peptidoglycans itself or to plasma membrane lipids. Plasma membrane is composed of a bilayer sheet of phospholipid molecules with their polar heads on the surface and their fatty acyl chains forming the interior. Gram-negative bacteria have a more complex cell wall. They have a relatively thin peptidoglycan layer, around 2 to 7 nanometer, covered by a 7 to 8 nanometer thick outer membrane made up of lipopolysaccharides. Porin proteins are present in the outer membrane, which allows passage of small molecules across the membrane. Nuclear material in the bacteria cell is not separated from the cytosol by a distinct nuclear membrane. However, it is usually concentrated in a specific clear region of the cytoplasm called the nucleoid. The genetic material usually contains a single circular DNA molecule. Ribosomes are composed of proteins and ribosomal RNA. The prokaryotic 70S ribosome is made up of a 50S large subunit and a 30S small subunit, where S refers to the Svedberg coefficient, which provides an indication about rate of sedimentation of the particle. A motile bacterium propels itself from one place to another within the medium by rotating its flagella. A bacterial flagellum is made up of the protein flagellin. It has a helical structure with a sharp bend called the hook just outside the membrane and a basal body containing the motor just below the membrane. To swim forward, the flagella rotate in counterclockwise direction. However, when flagellar rotation abruptly changes to clockwise direction, the bacterium tumbles in its place and seems incapable of moving. It then begins swimming again in another new random direction. Typical animal cell lacks a cell wall and contains several membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, ER, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, and peroxisomes. Click on each component to know more about them. An electron micrograph image of a plasma cell is shown here, clearly depicting the nucleus, Golgi material, lysosome, and mitochondrion. Click on each component to know more about them. Plant cells have a rigid cell wall and membrane-bound organelles such as nucleus, mitochondria, chloroplast, endoplasmic reticulum, ER, Golgi apparatus, lysosomes, vacuoles, and peroxisomes. Click on each component to know more about them. Mitochondria, commonly referred to as powerhouse of the cell, are membrane-bound organelles found in eukaryotic cells. They are responsible for generation of ATP to satisfy the body's energy requirements and are also involved in other processes such as cell signaling, cell cycle control, and cell growth. The organelle is made up of several compartments that carry out specialized functions and also contains its own independent genome that codes for mitochondrial proteins. Ribosomes, which are composed of proteins and ribonucleic acids, RNAs, play a central role in protein biosynthesis. They read the nucleic acid information from messenger RNA and convert this into the corresponding amino acid code of proteins. Eukaryotic ATS ribosomes are composed of a large 40S subunit, which binds to tRNA and amino acids, and a small 28S subunit, which binds to mRNA during protein synthesis. The subunit structure of prokaryotic and eukaryotic ribosomes differ from one another. The endoplasmic reticulum and Golgi apparatus are involved in synthesis, packaging, and transport of various biomolecules. The ribosome-studded rough ER is a major site for protein synthesis, while the smooth ER synthesizes lipids, steroids, metabolizes carbohydrates and steroids, and regulates calcium concentration in muscles. The Golgi complex functions to process and package macromolecules such as proteins and lipids for their export to various other cellular organelles or outside the cell. The nucleus is a membrane-bound organelle found in eukaryotic cells that is often considered as a control center of the cell. It houses the genetic material of the cell in the form of chromosomes containing DNA molecules complexed with proteins known as histones. The nucleus is responsible for maintaining this genetic information by replication and for expression of genes performing various functions. The nucleolus is mainly involved in ribosome assembly, after which the ribosomes are exported to the cytoplasm for protein synthesis. Lysosomes are found exclusively in animal cells for degrading any intracellular debris. They contain hydrolytic enzymes within sacs, which can digest and degrade any unwanted material when released. Peroxisome is an organelle containing enzyme like catalase that are responsible for protecting the cell against free radicals and peroxides. They also play a role in metabolism of very long-chain fatty acids. They have a single membrane and no independent genetic system.
All right, so let's now move on to cell cycle. And here, if you think about how from the single cell, especially fusion of egg cell and sperm cell, which gives rise to fertilized ovum, and that develops into the embryo, leads to the very orchestrated cell division to happen, which develops into the child. So all of these are, very sequential event, which happens, all the time in a very synchronized manner, in which way from the fertilized egg, now it has to convert to the 2-stage, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64 embryo stage, morula, blastula, gastrula, various stages of development. So all of that are, is very natural process which happens always very, in the correct manner. And that's where we see the growth, repair, reproduction process to happen perfectly all the time. Before we talk more about the cell division and the cell cycle, let us just recap and refresh few terminologies, which if I'm sure some of you are aware of, but if you are not aware of, let's just recap here. For example, genome, we are looking at all the DNA molecules in the eukaryotic cell, or the single DNA molecule in the prokaryotic cell. When we say somatic cell, these are the normal body cell, like skin cell and other cell, which are non-reproductive cell, and they have 2 sets of chromosomes. Whereas the gametes, these are the reproductive cell, which is especially sperm and egg, and they have half the chromosome as compared to the somatic cells. Again, some of these things could be refresher. Here I'll just show you some of the terminologies again, so that we will be clear. But broadly, when we look into the cell cycle, what we are going to look at how the cell divides, and especially mitotic phase becomes very important over there. However, before mitosis starts, cell takes a very long time to prepare itself for the cell division to happen, or M phase to happen. And that phase is known as the interphase. Interphase can be grouped into G1 phase, S phase, and G2 phase. Now, these are the 3 broad, the cell cycle stages, which is preparing the cell to get divided for the mitotic division to happen. And during this process of interphase, G1, S, and G2, there are some checkpoints which ensure that cell is really regulated. And that's why you see, like, regulated, the division is happening. If it becomes unregulated, then disease like cancer or various type of other abnormalities may happen, right? So this has to be very accurate, and no error can happen. So at the G1 phase, there is a checkpoint which is shown here. At the G2, again, there is a checkpoint which will ensure that now cell has sufficient amount of the DNA and the chromosome has become condensed, which is in the process of the S phase. And then now it is, once the cell allows it to move to the M phase, then only it is going to start for the mitotic phase or division to happen. Again, there's a checkpoint which shows here that now mitotic process got completed, and cell again need to replenish its growth and nutrients, and it moves to the G1 phase. So again, this is, we'll be talking more about these phases as we go along. So the figure from the book, again, just to remind you that, throughout the chapters or throughout the lectures, we'll be talking several interesting facts and many things. But the one which is really linked to just the quiz or exam is essentially various slide which I'm showing to you, and which is also having different figure numbers or the the page numbers, to give you at least some idea that from which sections these concepts have been covered. at the end, I'll show you which lectures I have used to make this presentation. But even if you cannot read the entire chapter, at least the sections which are describing these concepts, you should go back and read those to get better clarity. So the interphase, as we just spoke, is having three major phases: G1, S, and G2 phase. G1 phase is going to prepare the cell towards the first part of the interphase, and now provide sufficient material so that the S phase or the chromosome replication can happen. This is the phase when the chromatin material start getting condensed or becoming more thick, and now the DNA replication is going to happen. Once we get sufficient material over there, chromosomes get duplicated. Now then cell moves to the G2 phase, which is ensuring that cell is having all the required material for division to happen. And then after this longish interphase, a very short mitotic phase is there, which alternates with the interphase. And that's where the entire cell division happens, which is going to distribute the chromosomes to the daughter nuclei. So after the nuclear material, the nucleus get divided, then the cytoplasmic content also get divided in the process known as cytokinesis. The carrion or the nuclear material division is known as karyokinesis. So broadly, we'll be talking about these two major cell division, mitosis and meiosis. Mitosis, as we have discussed briefly, that we are looking into the normal body cells, somatic cell, how they are involved in the growth and repair, and they need to continuously replenish the older cells or the cell which being lost due to any accident or regeneration activities like that. Two daughter cells will be produced at the end of mitosis, which is having the same amount of DNA as a mother cell, and they will continue performing these kind of normal function. Meiosis is a division happening in the gamete cells or reproductive cells in the sperm and ovum. And at the end of meiotic division, there are 4 daughter cells being produced, which is going to carry half the amount of DNA as the mother cells. We'll just talk about mitosis first. Mitosis is very important because all our normal body cells requirement, the cell division to happen, the cell has to multiply and form the identical daughter cells to replenish the old cells, lost cells, damaged cells, like that. So therefore, mitosis is a continuous process happening. And again, as we just discussed, that if this process becomes uncontrolled, just these cells, if they lose the control of the division the way it should happen, and they start rapidly dividing and becoming uncontrolled to continuously grow irrespective of the body's requirement, then that may result into the tumor growth, and we see the problems like cancer arising. So let's just before we talk about the different phases of the mitosis, let us get familiar with some terminology. Of course, as we have mentioned to you that we would like to avoid very much mugging for the terminology or complex things to be memorized for that matter, but it is a good idea to use some logic and try to still get familiar with some terminology so that it will be easier for you to understand some of the concepts and also understand the chapters as you go along, right? So for the cell division to happen, as I just mentioned, that you need the entire chromatin material to get condensed, and now you would like to see more of the chromosome getting condensed for division to happen. Now what we are showing is, let's say the chromosomes from the father and mother, let's say one coming in the black color from father, red in the mother. And now we are seeing like, these are 2n equal to 6. We are looking at 6 chromosomes, and each one of these chromosomes have their chromatids. So these chromatids, what we are like on each chromosome, what you see, 2 pair of chromatids. If the red one which we are looking at, let's say from the mother, those are known as sister chromatids. Or just the logic here could be like they are coming from the same parent. And then the black one will be again, those chromatids will be sister chromatids. Again, only if you look at the 2 set pair of chromatids from the same chromosome. However, when you look at the pairing of the red with black, which is now coming from father and mother, so now you're looking at pair of homologous chromosomes, right? And these homologous chromosomes, they are also forming these, chromatid pair, which is not sister. So that is a non-sister chromatids, right? Only within same chromosome, whatever pairs we saw, that the black ones or the red ones, those were sister chromatids. These are non-sister chromatids because these are not coming from the same parent. From both the parents are coming. So I think some of these logic, if you can use and at least get familiar with, the homologous chromosomes, chromatids, sister chromatids, non-sister chromatids, it will become easier as you go along and study more of the concept when we talk about different stages of the mitosis and meiosis. So I just thought to first make you familiar, and by now I hope that you are clear that these terminologies you don't have to mug around, but at least use your logic, and that will become easier for you to follow it up. So these pair of sister chromatids, they are connected on these proteins on the centromere, which is these proteins are the kinetochore proteins. And this is where the sister chromatids of the same chromosomes are connected. And likewise, I showed you that, if you have a genome which is having 6 chromosomes, 3 coming from the maternal and 3 from the paternal side, shown in the red or the blue colors. The only blue ones are sister chromatids of the paternal side. Only red ones are the sister chromatids of maternal side. When they maternal and paternal chromosomes are making the homologous pairing, now that is showing the non-sister chromatids in the homologous pairing. So while we are talking about the organization of these chromatids and we are looking at the chromosome, now how so much DNA content is being packed, and think about we have billions of cells in the body and so much nuclear material has to get packed in each nucleus, right? So therefore, there is a very strong packaging mechanism involved. And that's where the DNA molecules, they get attached with the histone proteins. And we have talked at some point that histone proteins, which we have seen that these are quite peculiar in the eukaryotic cell, and also the archaea had shown some possibility of having these histone proteins. So these histone proteins are basic in nature. They, along with the DNA molecule, when they are getting packed, that is known as the nucleosome. And when the nucleosomes come together and get packed, that is known as the chromatins. So together, all of them is being packed in a very tight way, like a rope, which can be packed inside the nucleus. So now what we see here is the different type of histone proteins. We have histone H2A, histone H2B, histone H3, histone H4, and all of these histone proteins are in duplicate. So that's why we have 8 histone proteins. And these are quite important to play many important activities and role in the cell, which we will talk as we go along. But right now in this context, 8 histone proteins along with the DNA, they get packed, make nucleosome, and this fiber of nucleosome together is known as the chromatin. So in the mitosis, which we are going to talk now, we have looked at interphase from G1S and G2 phase. And now we are going to talk about the smaller part, which is the mitotic phase, which is having prophase, prometaphase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase, and cytokinesis. Some of these concepts or name at least would be familiar to some of you who have studied at high school level biology. And for some of you may not be clear, but we will at least discuss it here again. On my left side, the image is shown more conceptual figure. On the right hand side is more microscopic image. All of them are from your book, which is the figure numbers I mentioned. So prophase, which is the cell is getting prepared for mitotic division to happen. And that's where chromatins, initially they are just like, the thread. They start getting condensed. So when they start getting condensed, now then 2 sister chromatids appear, right? So first thing in the prophase is now this particular 2 sister chromatids can be seen. And each chromosome will start appearing as the 2 sister chromatids, which is jointed on the centromere. Again, now we have the mitotic spindle, which is going to play a very important role for this entire nuclear material to get pulled to 2 different poles, and then they have to further separate out to form 2 cells. So the proteins, which is very important in this particular activities, are microtubules. These microtubules, as you can see multiple places here, when they are connected with the kinetochore protein, which we have discussed earlier, then these are known as kinetochore microtubule. And when the microtubules are not connected to the kinetochore, those are known as the non-kinetochore microtubules. So in the pro-metaphase, which is now it is going to prepare it towards the metaphase, which is very important activity for all the chromatids to get aligned. Now start pulling towards both the poles. And all of this material start trying to align itself on the metacore plate. And these microtubules are going to play a very important role of moving them apart. And also now we are going to see them getting aligned, the chromatin getting aligned on the metaphase plate. So this part, which is equidistant from both the poles, which we can see here, spindle poles, that is very important activity. Now cell is almost aligned itself, and it has to, these chromatins, the chromatin material, they have to repel and they have to move to the different spindle poles. Now then only cell can divide. And this is where various type of proteins play very important role. Proteins like cohesins, these are involved in this particular type of gluing these proteins, and their separation will only allow them to move to different poles. So now cohesins are group of the protein. We, again, to simplify that the terminologies, we are not discussing about all the cohesin family protein, but just to alert you, it is not one protein, it is a set of protein which plays very important role. And what we are looking at now, these chromatids, they are getting separated. And these are started pulling toward different opposite poles, so that cell can start getting prepared for making the daughter chromosomes. So after anaphase, now in the telophase, two daughter nuclei are getting formed. Nuclear envelope is started reappearing because it has to cover up all this nuclear material. Spindle poles are getting, microtubules are getting depolymerized. Chromosomes are again becoming less condensed because the division already has happened. And therefore now the karyokinesis, or the complete division of the nucleus or nuclear material, has completed. After this, now cell has to again distribute its cytoplasm into both the daughter cells, and therefore the process of cytokinesis happens. So karyokinesis, karyon is the nucleus, cytokinesis, cyto is the plasma, cytoplasm. So therefore now the cell furrow formation happens like this, and we have the cell forming two daughter cells. So that is the gist of the mitosis. Of course, at the experimental level, these things are very routinely seen and being utilized to study these cell at great detail. And even many of the core research areas, especially looking at the cancer cell and cancer cell biology, many of the microscopic observations are made to trying to understand how these divisions are happening, how it is getting uncontrolled, what kind of marker proteins we can see, which is showing higher expression in these kind of cancer cell, how to study them, all of that. That's where microscopy has played very important role of giving us visual understanding of these cell divisions or uncontrolled cell division, or how to regulate that. So let us now do this first experiment for today, where idea is to give you some glimpse of how to visualize the cell division using high resolution imaging. I'll now request Meher, one of the head TA, to show her screen and share this experiment.
Thank you, sir. Hello, everyone. So now we will be going through one of the experiments that sir already told about. So the experiment is, how do we visualize the cell division inside I'm sorry, there is this problem in the screen sharing. Just give me a second. Sir, is my screen visible?
Yes, just make it full screen.
Yeah. So, so the experiment is, how can we visualize the cells under the microscope? The purpose of visualizing is, whenever we want to study or something, we should see it. And then one of the method that through which we can visualize the cells under the microscope is the fluorescence microscopy. So the basic principle that lies behind the fluorescence microscopy is that we consider the components of the cell. As we know, it has various proteins or other biomolecules. We consider them as antigen, and then they are using the various antibodies, can be primary antibody or secondary antibody. So antibodies are the molecules that specifically bind to that particular antigen, and then they are connected to a fluorophore. So again, fluorophore is a molecule that upon absorbing light, it re-emits light. So that means it is fluorescence, it will give a fluorescent signal, and then that would be visualized. So as we can see here in this pictorial representation, that different cellular components, including the nucleus and cytoplasmic components, they are visualized and they can be seen under the microscope. So, so that means directly or indirectly, we are linking the fluorophores to the cellular component, and then that is visualized under the microscope. So, one of the kind of microscopy technique that is used for this is the confocal microscope. And then using these techniques, we can monitor the cells, their components, we can visualize them, we can understand their expression and localization. So now we'll go through a demonstrative steps that are involved when we have a prepared slide on which our cells are present. So if we want to see the cells, we have to mount the cells on these slides, and then these slides can be visualized in the microscope. So now we'll go through the demonstrative steps which are involved in the confocal microscopy.
This is the spinning disc confocal microscopy situated at Bioscience Department, IIT Bombay. As you can see, this is the laser equipment and this is the microscope setup. As you can see, this is the main light source from where the light light bulb is situated and from where the laser come, and as you can see, this is the eyepiece and this is the camera to capture the images, and this is the joystick controller to control the stage where we keep specimen, and this is the control panel from which we can change different objectives manually, ranging from 10x to 63.
Meher, please stop it. Let me share from my side.
One is air objective.
Okay, sir.
Spinning disc confocal microscopy situated at Bioscience Department, IIT Bombay. As you can see, this is the laser equipment and this is the microscope setup. As you can see, this is the main light source from where the light bulb is situated and from where the laser come. And as you can see, this is the eyepiece and this is the camera to capture the images, and this is the joystick controller to control the stage where we keep specimen, and this is the control panel from which we can change different objectives manually, ranging from 10x to 63x, and there are two types of objectives. One is air objective and oil objective, differing in their numerical aperture, and these are the coarse and fine adjustment to adjust the objective. And these, as you can see, this is the stage where we keep specimen or slides, cells, which you want to observe. As you can, if you look at closely here, as you can see, there are different. You can see objective here, and we can change different objective by using control panel. As I change 10x here, and you can change up 20x also. Like that, you can change the objective using control panel. So basically, this plastic chamber is like to keep it is useful for to observe the cells with live cells. So this plastic chamber maintains the temperature and CO2 inside this chamber. So we will use the CO2 cylinder to inject the CO2 cylinder into this chamber, and this chamber also helps to maintain the temperature. That helps us to observe the live cells using this whole microscopic chamber. And this is the Zen's software. Using this software, we observe the cells using the camera which I have shown there. So now I'm using 63x oil objective. So I need to top up oil on the objective. We just take a drop of the cancerous cells which I'm going to observe. So you just take this and put it on the stage very gently. Using the joystick, I can move the stage. So I want to focus on the slide. So I just move the stage using joystick. Now using the force, I will bring the objective close to the slide. As you can see, first I want to observe the cells in the eyepiece. To look at the eyepiece, I will use the fluorescence microscope. I will go to rotate. So in confocal microscopy, you can take images in the z-axis. That means you can take the pictures at different planes, at different points at the z-axis, and you can capture the information that is present in every position. That means if the cell is a 3D structure. So that means in the Kanak strip, cell will be like this. So you can take the information from the lowest axis to upper axis. So from the lower z axis point to upper z point, you can capture as many slices as you want, and you can actually merge them together to see the whole information present in the cell. So that is the advantage of confocal microscopy. Now I will show you the jet positions I have taken of cell. So here, as you can see, I have taken 40 Z points in a cell. So I am playing now. So this video will show you that the images taken at every Z point from 1 to 40. As you can see, the video play will show you the information at every Z point till Z position 40. If you see, you see in the gallery mode, these are my 40 Z positions from 1 position to 40 position. As you can see, these are particular Z axis point at Z axis. So there are total 40 points, so that I can capture the information presented at different Z positions in a cell. So as you can see here in this picture, there are two types of cells. This is the mitotic cells, that is dividing cell. As you can see in the dividing cell, there are presence of spindle poles and spindle microtubules, which allow the suppression of chromosomes into opposite sides of the cells. So it is distributed to the daughter cells. And you can see the surrounding cells. These are the interface cells, which are non-dividing cells, and the micros are well spread. You can see the difference between interface cells and the dividing cells. So in the dividing cells, is the formation of spindle microtubules. In interface cells, there are well spread microtubules.
Meher, you can go ahead now.
Yes, sir. So, as we just saw in the demonstrative video that finally after getting the results, we can observe the various cellular stages inside under the microscope. As we can see is the here this is one of the cell, and the blue color here it represents the DNA staining. So blue was given to the DNA. So these are in this first cell we cannot clearly see which stage it is. So probably it is the initial stage, maybe it is interphase or prophase. And similarly, we have the other stages also. I'm sorry, sir. Something is happening with the slides and I cannot move them. Yeah, so the second stage here is it is the metaphase, because the esters are at the opposite poles, and the complete spindle is being seen here. So the green color, which are the these which are represented by spindle, these are basically the tubulin protein. They are immunostain. Then they are visualized here. So this stage is the metaphase stage, and similarly the cells here are in the number 3. They are cytokinesis. So because we can see that the two cells are functioning from each other. So they are connected only at the at very like small portion is connected. So they are basically the daughter cells are separating from each other. So and this stage is also one of the stage in the metaphase, mitosis. So then you can recognize which is this phase, as just the pole came for this identification of this particular stage. And this is one of the experiment that was done using the similar principle of immunofluorescence and then confocal microscopy to understand the various stages of to understand the dynamics of various protein, or their localization, or their role in the mitosis. So here we can see that there are 3 different columns which are showing that the first one, which is showing the spindle, then second blue one is showing the DNA, and the third red one is showing the centriole. So inside the spindle, these are the 3 major components which form the mitotic spindle. So the green portion, these are the alpha tubulin protein. They are immunostain, and we can see here that the spindle proteins are clearly visible. And the blue one is the DNA in all 3 cells. And third one, the red one, is the gamma tubulin. So gamma tubulin, basically this is an important marker protein for the centriole, for the centrosome. And when individually these are seen like this, only red color, only blue color, or only green color, and when all the images are merged together, they give a complete picture of the cell. So here the complete mitotic spindle is visualized by looking at all the components, including the centriole, DNA, and the alpha tubulin, that is the spindle protein. So this is one of the method that we use for visualizing the cell division, different stages of the cell division, and this way they can be used for understanding of the cell division in normal as well as the diseased condition. So this work has been done in biosciences department in the Dulal Panda's lab. So we acknowledge them for this particular experiment, for this slide. So that's all for this experiment. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Meher. And so just, for this poll, sorry, it was slightly missed time because of Meher's slide coming a little slower on the screen. But yeah, the correct answer was telophase. And sometimes probably it is not very clear when you look at a small image. So anyway, that's where the microscopist and the cell biologist, they spend a lot of time on looking at images, right? Okay, so now let me continue, and we talk moving from the mitosis to the meiosis now. And what you see here, like, from the same family, different children, they look different, right? And therefore, what is important that we are looking at some genetic variations which is happening in the siblings of the same family. Is that because of some shuffling of the genes happening in the process of from the pedigree from the parents to the children? Because otherwise all the children from the same family, they should look same. So therefore meiosis becomes very important to provide the uniqueness or the very much individual personality per se, or individual genetic components, or even genetic variations, which is only possible because of meiosis. First, I think let me talk to Karthik. He has some raised hand. Karthik, you want to ask something? Hello?
Yes, sir. The answer to that poll, shouldn't it be anaphase? Because before that interphase, the prophase, metaphase, and anaphase. Telophase is fifth.
See, I think again, we cannot totally rule out, given that image was not very clear. But what is actually looked at over there was the telophase. So that is closest possible. But again, as I said, we cannot totally rule out other possibilities, given that image was not very clear. Ideally, one should look at much more high resolution to zoom into that. Then only we can be very sure about this stage. Be sure, by the way, for all of you to identify these type of cell division stages in your subsequent quizzes or exams. Sometime we will ask you to identify these stages, but of course we'll give you the clear diagrams, not like the actual microscopic images. But microscopy requires a lot of expertise and also detailed views to visualize that. So that's where I think we can compromise right now at best. And the quiz was slightly mistimed, the poll was mistimed. That's where we had some delays. All right,
Okay.
so let's move on to the meiosis, which is very important for the reproduction to happen. It actually alternates between haploid and diploid generations. I hope, Karthik, you have been answered, so you can lower down your hand. It is just yeah. So yeah, so what is shown here in the blue color is the haploid or the slightly green color, and the orange one is the diploid stage. So when we have these gametes, the egg cell or the sperm cell, these are haploid gametes. After fertilization, they form diploid zygote, which is having 2n equal to 46. Mitosis will continue to replenish these cells. And in the ovary and testis, it continues to have the growth. And after meiosis, it again generates the haploid gamete. So what we see, alteration of haploid and diploid generations in this particular reproduction process. So broadly, we have discussed about mitosis. Let's recap what we have spoken. And then we will try to compare how we can understand it better from the meiotic process. Or where is the key differences what we can find, especially in the meiotic stage 1 and 2. So let's say this is a parent cell, which we have been discussing about having 2n equal to 6 chromosomes. After the chromosome duplication, which has happened, now these became condensed, the daughter chromatids, sister chromatids. And then they are getting aligned in the metaphase. As it further gets divided, now after anaphase and telophase, it forms 2 daughter cells of mitosis, each one of having same 2n equal to 6, same number of chromosome, or in more technical word, you can say ploidy is maintained. Ploidy is like, the overall chromosome content, 2n equal to 6 to begin with, and now that remains the same. The ploidy level is maintained in the mitosis. Now, if we look at a little closer to the meiosis, in meiosis, what is happening now, these chromosomes, the red one and the blue one, from both the parents, maternal and paternal side, they are showing this particular crossing over, right? And that is very important because the site where this crossing over happens, or the blue one is exchanging some genes to the red one, or red one is exchanging some genes to the blue one, that is known as the chiasma. That crossing over site is known as chiasma. And this is a place when the homologous chromosomes, they are actually pairing together and chiasma being formed, and now they are going to exchange some genetic material. This is very first crucial key event which makes the meiosis different than the mitosis. And now this is actually very much responsible for the genetic variations to happen. Meiosis has broadly 2 different cycles, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. In meiosis 1, what we are talking is like mitosis. Meiosis 1, we are looking at some unique changes, and meiosis 2 will be like mitosis to duplicate that cell. So now the first change, I hope we are clear that the unique event happened in the chiasma. And I've highlighted 3 major events which is happening in meiosis 1, which is very unique, only happening in meiosis, which I think you should keep in mind. So after prophase 1, which was like the prophase of the mitosis, but the major change was homologous chromosomes came together and exchanged some material. After that, they are again pairing together and forming on the metaphase plate. The metaphase 1 event happened. And then these homologs are now getting separated. So what we have seen now, these are red ones has exchanged some material with the blue ones, and blue one has exchanged material with the red one. And now both one of them have some, the recombinant event had happened. Therefore, now we can see the some gene shuffling is happening, and the some characteristics from the both the parents are being seen in children eventually, right? So this is the process of meiosis. Now these homologous chromosome, they separate during the anaphase 1 and followed by telophase 1. And now after this, the whole of the mitosis repeats in the meiosis 2 process, which gives rise to 2 cells to the 4 cell. So after that, what we see now, we have the 4 daughter cells, which is being produced, which is having half the ploidy level, right? So now it is not 2n, it will become n. Each one of it has having 3 chromosomes, and it is already sharing some of these sister chromatids. Therefore, it is giving the uniqueness to each one of these a cell, which is 4 in number. So these are the key differences which you should keep in mind. Alok, I will talk to you as I finish this part. Please don't disrupt in between. So a comparison of mitosis and meiosis is essentially we can just look at where things are, which is making it different from the process of mitosis to meiosis. So DNA replication is happening in the interphase, which we have discussed, and that occurs in the mitotic cells before the cell gets prepared, and it also happens in the meiotic 1 phase. Now the number of divisions, it's only one division because only one cycle is operating here. So prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Whereas in case of meiosis, there are 2 number of divisions are happening, and each one of those, meiosis 1 and meiosis 2, is going to include prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Now synapsis, or the recombination event to happen, which is sharing the genetic material in recombination, that does not happen in mitosis. That's where just simply duplicating and keep moving for the cell to growth and repair and the normal body requirements. Whereas here, the crossing over happens as metaforms, and the sister chromatids with the cohesin proteins, they are going to pair together. Number of daughter cells being formed are only 2 here in this case of mitosis, and they are going to be genetically identical. Whereas in case of meiosis, they are 4, and they are having the haploidy, or the N, being formed. Role in the animal or the plant or human body, essentially to look at the normal body requirements. It is not linked to the sexual reproduction. It's mainly for asexual reproduction and the normal growth and repair phenomenon. Whereas the meiotic cells or meiotic process is important for gametes to be produced, spores, especially in the sporophyte plants, reducing the number of chromosomes. And it's actually very important for creating the variation or the unique identity to every individual. And that's, I think, is an important point. Why all these siblings in the same family, they don't look same, and they have each their own individual identity, despite that the parents are same and their chromosomes are same. So if this type of gene shuffling was not happening, we would have not seen this variability to happen. So that, I think, there are many actually other events happen as well in the meiosis. We will not talk about those. Let's just keep in mind the key event, which is making it all different from the mitosis to meiosis, and where you can see that unique activities in meiosis, which makes it different from mitosis. So that's all. That's will be good enough at this stage of learning, and you can read these sections from the Campbell book. Now there are several questions which I'd like to take now, which I will discuss from the forum which you have sent to your queries. But before I come to that, I think Alok had some question or comments. Let me ask Alok to talk, and then I can take some of the further question which I have in my slides here. Alok, you want to speak something?
Okay, so the first thing I want to tell is a little joke linked to mitosis. Okay, the joke is, what do you tell your sister when she steps on your toe?
Can you be a little louder? So sister chromatids.
Well, what do you tell your sister when she steps on your toe?
You can ask this question to your colleagues.
Mitosis. Okay. Then the next one is, how is it possible for 2 people who are heterozygous to have all their children be homozygous recessive?
All right, we will come to this in genetics, Alok. Right now, let's not quiz the whole class for the homozygous, heterozygous. Many of these terms may not be clear to them that, you're looking at same alleles or different alleles and how they can be same or different. These terminologies, I'm very happy and impressed that you are familiar with these things. But these will come more in the genetics when we talk about it, the various dominant and recessive characteristics and homozygous and heterozygous. So let's wait a little bit more. I think 2 classes more. After that, we'll really talk at great length about it. But nevertheless, we liked your joke about mitosis. Okay, let me just first take on a priority some of the questions which had already come on the Google form from many of the students. And we have tried to club it together so that we can save the time and clarify the doubts. Just first of all, for all of your clarity, the experiment which we are showing is not going to be asked by the direct question, not the direct question, but it is actually to enhance your learning and your understanding overall. Just so that, that can help you to understand the concepts of the theoretical stuff better. But directly, we are not going to ask you how confocal works and how this microscopy works and what you see, like which, resolution which we saw, what type of objective field we saw. Those questions, do not expect that. So do not worry about, again, for that detail, whatever we are showing on the experimental side at the great length. It's a good idea for you to get clear and good idea for you to appreciate how these biological experiments are being done. And whatever you see the textbook actually comes after all of these efforts and all of these experiments, right? That's where biology is very logical as well. It just comes with a lot of hypotheses, experiments, proving those, disproving those, then finally you see a result. So now many questions were actually asked about the culturing of the bacteria, which we showed in the last class. Especially some students had asked for the steps which were involved. They were slightly overwhelmed with the different thing which we showed in the video or live in the session. So first thing which was done in that experiment was to prepare the LB media or Luria broth media. These are, you are pouring that in a Petri dish. And after some time, this was actually hot. After you allow that to cool down in that laminar hood, it becomes solidified at the room temperature. And then you are going to take, from some stock, somebody you have to buy that bacteria. If not, you can ask Alok to have a pet of bacteria, probably somewhere hidden in a cupboard. And then you can streak that bacteria in the culture plate, right? And then that culture plate, which is now you have freshly streaked the bacteria, then now you can put that in an incubator at 37 degrees, which gives a favorable growth to the bacteria. And you keep it overnight, means at least 12 to 16 hours. And now next day when you come, and again, the way you would have streak, like, this kind of lines, or you can write BB101, or you can make any beautiful drawings. It will, all the bacteria will grow like that, what you see here. And that becomes very dense colonies, which you do not want. You would like to pick up the region which are having single colonies. So now you pick up a single colony so that it's not a clump of all the bacteria. And then you put that in a fresh LB medium. If you want to grow more, if you want to culture more, if you want to make more amount of bacteria for the protein work or DNA work, then you can grow in multiple tubes, right? You can do in multiple flasks. So that's where you can again further grow them in these tubes and incubate them and keep in shaker. So this is just the broad process which we showed you for bacterial culturing in laboratory. A lot of scientists who work in this area and have become more famous and popular in this time of the pandemic are microbiologists and virologists who works in the microbes and the bacteria and the viruses. Again, few more questions were about what was this LB agar media and why it was used, things like that. So again, bacteria also requires the food, right, for its nutrition. And therefore, in the Petri dish, what you add, the LB media, that is providing tryptone, some amino acids, peptides, yeast extract, and sodium chloride. So all of these things gives bacteria ability to grow and survive. And then you provide a favorable temperature for bacteria to sufficiently grow and eat that nutrient so that it makes multiple colonies next day when you come to do the experiment. So I hope it at least addresses some of the questions and queries which some of you has raised. Some of you have also asked about the 3-domain classification, which is the rationale about it and multiple things which I have already spoken earlier, but just to clarify myself again, what we discussed about eukaryotes and we looked at the bacteria or the prokaryotes. In between, we also mentioned that a new domain archaea is also exists, which is distinct than the eukaryotes and prokaryotes. So how it is distinct, that could be looked at their genome profile, their RNA profile. And that's where a scientist made to look at 16S ribosomal RNA profile and found that they are very distinct for eukaryotes or archaea or the bacteria. So this is where you can divide them. But if you look at functionality wise, archaea is having more similarity at the biochemical level and molecular level, like eukaryotes, which is different than the prokaryotes. So in this light, again, some of the questions being asked, and we have discussed briefly, but again, to clarify, the histone proteins become very important. These are present in the eukaryotes and absent in the prokaryotes. These proteins, as I today also talked, that they are going to form the nucleosomes along with the DNA, and that is going to be helpful for all the DNA packaging. So these proteins are also present in archaea, which makes them closer to the eukaryotes. And also the archaeal ribosome structure is also quite similar to the eukaryotes as compared to bacteria. So some of these things make them closer to the eukaryotes. Several questions being still asked about the gram staining. We have discussed that. We have also shown you the steps involved. Ideally, what we are looking at, how to do the differential staining, utilizing the properties of the cell wall of these bacteria to distinguish them into gram positive and gram negative. So looking at this, the thick layer of peptidoglycan, that is makes the gram positive different than the gram negative, which is having thin layer of peptidoglycan. And this property has been utilized by microbiologists to look at how to stain these better. And therefore, when we are looking at series of stains, which is being used, now this particular peptidoglycan, it can trap the crystal violet. And that is why you can see this kind of gram positive purple and violet color. Whereas the peptidoglycan, very thin, is not retaining that, and that can wash off. And therefore, you are using a subsequent stain to visualize that particular gram negative bacteria, which looks the purple or the red coloration. Now, further, one question was asked about the grams iodine, why that is being used. So that is actually one of the trapping agent, which increases how the the stain could bind more towards the cell wall. So that actually helps to form the complex of the crystal violet, and that's where when you see these staining pattern emerging in the thick cell wall, it does not come out in the peptidoglycan in the gram positive. In the thin, it comes out, and then eventually you will, after alcohol wash, you will add with the safranin dye, and these kind of images will be seen. One more question, which I think I will take this last question, and we are getting slightly late for the quiz. TS have reminded me now. So one question was about the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, how it is involved in the packaging, because we talked about three things: rough endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and the Golgi complex, Golgi apparatus. So endoplasmic reticulum is having two types, RER and SER. When we have the ribosomes on top of them, that is known as rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is involved in the protein synthesis. Whereas the smooth endoplasmic reticulum is actually involved in packaging these material and helping it to move out and actually connect them with the Golgi apparatus. So what you see here is essentially these transport vesicles, which is coming from these endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and the proteins are actually being transported in these transport vesicle. Then they are moving after this transitional ER. They are now moving to the Golgi apparatus for further transport. And Golgi apparatus is the main warehouse to receive or sort or ship these proteins to right destination. So this is where interplay of the endomembranous system is involved, from the rough ER to SER to the Golgi complex or Golgi apparatus. One last question I'll take here, but I'll not talk in great detail. Some of you had apprehension regarding the bioinformatics. You had asked some questions. Let us stop this thing for the time being. We are not going to ask any question in the quiz today. We will have more of this activities in the another hands-on session, so that you can be more prepared. Then we will ask question or quiz based on that. All right. So just to tell where we are going to head now further on this, we are going to talk about how the cell cycle dysregulation. We have talked about in the regulated manner how cell cycle works, but if it gets dysregulated, how it can cause disease like cancer, that we will talk next. But today we have to stop it here. And I hope today's lecture has given you at least some insight about how the origin of cell moved from the progenitor eukaryotic cell to the more specialized cell, which is have ability for respiration and photosynthesis with mitochondria and chloroplast organelle. Cell division process, the interplay of interphase and mitotic phase. And we look at some detail level about different phases of the mitosis, how that can be compared with meiosis, and how these type of key differences are there in mitosis and meiosis. And finally, we would like to move ahead and understand the cell cycle dysregulation in context of disease like cancer. So in today's lecture, some of these chapters which have been used are, we'll continue with the tour of the cell, move on to the cell cycle and meiosis. So these are the chapters which will be giving you further reading. But again, some of the specific sections which we have given you, you should look into those in more detail. I'll stop right now here because we are late for the quiz. We will start the Moodle quiz right now. I'm still going to be online here to talk to you some more time. I see Rohit and some other student may want to ask me some question. We'll be happy to take some further query, but you first finish your 10 minutes quiz. Class will finish, but I'll be available to talk to you further. Okay, but we do not want the class to be delayed and many students cribbing that there's something else to do. So we are going to start the Moodle quiz. Please join on Moodle. Once we finish the Moodle quiz, you come back here. We will talk at length some more time. Okay, thank you.